So the first thing I'm going to do for HTTP server 2, again, I'm going to fork it, clone it, create a branch, and then work off of that branch. So I'm going to fork it over to Tom Preetz. Wait, can you guys see my screen?
I can see it.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. I forked it over to Tom Preetz HTTP server 2. I'm going to git clone it. So I'm going to come down here, open up this, and say git clone HTTP server 2, cd HTTP server 2, and then code and open up HTTP server 2 into my current window. Cool. So I'm going to open up this request file and server file and see what it's about. So I'm going to, cool. No, that's not what I wanted to do. Server right there. All right. So I'm going to open up the terminal and run this. So Python server. So server is running. I'm going to come over here. What's the localhost? 9292. Localhost 9291 was it? So there we go. We have hello world. So let's quickly walk through kind of what's happening here. We're importing the socket module, importing date and time. From the request file, we're importing the request class, which we'll do. We're creating a socket object and binding it to a server variable, and we're binding this socket sock stream, so like the TCP port, I think, to this specific port number on our local machine 9292. We're listening. We're doing server.listen, which we're actually listening to incoming requests onto this port. We're creating a client connection to allow new requests to come in. Client request, we're creating, so once we actually get a client connection, we're passing that client connection into this request. So stuff comes into our port, we're parsing through that request, we're decoding it because it's coming in through bytes as bytes, and we have to decode it to UTF-8. And then, so we have that client request object, and inside this request object, we have a parsed request object that has our URI, which literally is like the backslash. It's like the URL after the .com or whatever. So if I go to just backslash, I get hello world right here. And if I do backslash time, I should have the time displayed like so. All right. So making sure all that works. Now let's actually kind of read about HTTP server 2. Returning hard-coded responses for every request isn't very useful, and generating HTML in Python is a bit of a chore. Unfortunately, there's a Python library called Jinja2 that makes generating HTML much easier. So before, we're literally writing it out in string format and passing in variables inside this formatted string. So Jinja allows us to write HTML and interpolate Python code inside it. To get started, we'll run the following commands after cloning the repo. So does anybody have any questions at where we're currently at with like the baseline from HTTP server 1? All right. So I'm going to create a virtual environment. How do I create a virtual environment?
Python tech m venv.
Python -m venv, and then the name of the virtual environment. Do you want to? No. So if I list everything out, I've got my virtual environment right there. All right. So how do I actually go into my virtual environment?
Source name of the
source
Then
v,
v, and then bin activate.
bin activate. So now I'm in like a brand new environment on my local machine, and now I need to install the Jinja 2 library. I'm gonna clear it. Cool.
Does this virtual environment stay on your computer, I guess, forever?
It does only, but when you're activated, when you activate it, then it goes into your virtual environment. So when you deactivate, when you get out of it, like your virtual environment is still here, but you're not in it at all. So think of it as just a folder.
So if we're working on a group project and we're all pulling from GitHub, do we all create our own virtual environment and start that up every time?
So what you'll do, you won't be creating it. You'll be pushing your virtual. You won't have a virtual environment. You'll have well, you will have a virtual environment, but you won't be pushing your virtual environment up to GitHub. You'll have a requirements.txt file. So you'll create a virtual environment on your local machine, just like we did here, and then you'll install this requirements.txt file that will hold all the required libraries that you need to run your application. All right. I think, no, do you know the command for creating a TXT file or requirements? Is it pip freeze?
I think pip freeze is right.
I don't know if that's it. So pip freeze, yeah. Anyway, but in order to create a TXT file or a requirements file, you can create one pretty easily.
I did it yesterday with Chris. It's just pip freeze.
Is it just pip freeze?
Yep.
Thought there was a way. Okay. Oh crap! I couldn't. All right. List clear. List everything. Okay. So I'm going to actually go back into my virtual environment. I actually pip freezed on the entire machine. Pip freeze, activate. All right. The list. Okay, cool. So I've got Jinja 2 installed. It's fine. So let's continue. So it says, as our applications get larger and larger, we need to organize our files within folders. In Django, all HTML files are nested within a templates directory. So make a templates directory, CD in there, and then create a file called time.html. So I'm going to make directory templates, CD into templates, and touch time.html, code time. All right. So here's my time.html. So I open that up. So I created a templates folder right here. I CD'd into it. I created a time.html, and I opened that time.html file right here. All right. We should have an HTML file for our /time route. So templates /time.html. I'm just going to copy this HTML into our time. And here again, we just have HTML. We have a head. We don't really need these style sheets right now. I'm just going to comment that out, or the JavaScript. But inside the body, notice how we have the time is now followed by this open bracket, two open brackets, followed by a time and two closing brackets. This is how we pass in Python data into our HTML. So think of this as like a variable. All right. So we've got an HTML file with a twist. The two curly braces are to interpolate a time variable that we pass into Python /Jinja. All right. So let's look at our server. So instead of doing all of this, we want to actually open up our time template, pass it into, let's actually just copy this code and walk through it. LF. All right, I'm gonna clear that. I'm just gonna make sure everything still works. Python server. All right, it's running. If I refresh it, oh, what happened? Template from file not found. So I have to from Jinja 2 import template, import the template class. So inside the Jinja library or module, they have a template class, just kind of like how it, like a request class. Inside the Jinja 2 module, there's a template class. So let's run that again and refresh. Why isn't it working?
Quick question, Tom.
Yep.
On time.html, when we did the time with 2 curly brackets on either side, is that how you interpolate on an HTML document? Is it 2 curly brackets like that?
Yes, specifically with Jinja 2.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. Let's see if this is working. Just want to make sure. So let's kind of read what's happening. So it's not coming through HTML right now. It says, hey, this page isn't working. Let's kind of walk through what's actually happening in this code. So I visit the / or \time. It opens up the time template as my file. We read the my file, so read that HTML. So if I literally would just print HTML from file and kill the server, clear it. All right, it's already in use. I'm gonna create another port. Run that. So the page isn't working, but I'm printing, it's literally just printing the raw HTML from the file right here. And then I'm passing that raw HTML into the template class. So this is going to allow me to pass in variables and run methods off of this template class. So I'm assigning template to this template object with the HTML passed in as an argument. And then right here on line 25, this template class, which is coming from here, has a .render method off of it. So there's a render instance variable, or render instance method, not instance variable. And I'm passing in time into that render as the body response. And now the body response dot encode, I'm trying to pass that through, but nothing's coming through. But if I were to split the terminal and list everything and source VNV bin activate and do curl 9292, what's going on here? I get, why didn't it work? Oh, receive connection reset by peer. All right, something happened. So it must have timed out. Why didn't it work? Oh, let's see what happened. So there's something in this code, but it's a client parse line 3 and then init. So there's something in here that couldn't parse the code. But we can actually, does anybody know why it's not working in the web page? Anybody? There's some error here, but I'm not gonna worry about the error there right now, just because I really want it to really show up here on the web page. So in my HTML template, I'm literally just returning this portion, just the body.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes, so I think we have to call that, yes, that method
Yep.
to,
Exactly. We have to call this method.
because
We have
we did it online, line 19 for that part, but for Elif we didn't.
Right. Exactly. So we can call, I think it's, what is it? Oop. Build HTML response. HTML response. And then pass this in there. Oop. You just want to pass in the body response and then get that and do dot encode that. So, because we want to add the headers. Okay, content, text, type, blah, 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 and then also add the HTML body. Let's see if this works now. Clear it. Python server, refresh it. There, we've actually got the time showing up in the, right up there. Don't know why it wasn't showing up here, but we don't need to worry about that anymore. Cool. Don't need to print that anymore. Does anybody have any questions about the templates, creating a time template, opening up the time template, reading from that file, passing the HTML into this template class, and then the template class has a render instance method on it where we're passing in essentially an object. This is a keyword argument with time as the key and the date time as the value. So this time right here on line 24 gets inputted into the HTML as time. And then we have assign that to a body response, and we pass that body response into the build HTML response that appends the HTTP headers onto it. And that's what allows it to show up in the browser.
I have a quick question, Tom.
Yep.
Where we have the body response equals template dot render, and then in the parentheses we have time equals date time dot date time. Now, what if we had another? You might have said this, but I'm like trying to stay tracking here. What if we had another variable we wanted? Could we just do comma? Yep, and then add it in there. Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Also, this is a keyword argument. You can even pass this in as an object, and it should still work. So instead of like that, you can do like that.
Awesome.
And if I stop that, ran the server, still works. Cool. Let's keep going. All right. Try hitting HTTP. Okay, this is where you're finding that it can't hit it. Turns out that the Chrome needs the correct HTTP headers. That's what we just kind of did. We utilized that build HTML response to append the headers to our body. So now we just have to repeat for just the basic route. So we just kind of have to create another HTML template called index.html. Let's move that up here, move it, and then HTML, do that. I don't really need any of this. I can just do h1 tag, say hello world. Cool. All right, so now we kind of, just like what we're doing down here, we pretty much repeat the exactly same thing up here. but instead of the time, we want to pass in the index. And we don't need this build HTML response hello world anymore because we're going to be utilizing the index.html for the hello world. So we can get rid of that. So opening up the index.html is my file, reading everything. And for here, we're not passing in any data. So we're not passing in time. So we can literally just keep the render method like so, I believe. Let's see if this works. View render, build HTML response, cool. So if I kill the server, clear the screen, terminal, start it, come over here, we have time still working. Now let's go to just, there we go, we have hello world working now. But you see there's a lot of kind of repeated code here and here. We want to like extract out that code that's repeated into maybe another method. So we come down here. So now we want to refactor. As we build more routes, we're going to have a lot more Jinja 2 templates. So let's extract reading this file into its own method. So let's bring that up here. So we created this get template method that passes in the path, which is the URI of what, or pretty much, no, it's not the URI, it's the actual path of where we are extracting the templates. So it's essentially, it's the template name, index, time. If we add another template, it'll be that, the name of that. And then it just returns what would be HTML from file. So if we want to refactor that, we can get rid of this. And whoop, return file.read. And here we can just call get template and pass in index for that one. And likewise for here, we can pass in get template dot time. Let's see if everything still works. I'm going to kill the server, clear the terminal, run the server again. Everything is still working. Cool. Does anybody have any questions about extracting the get template method into its own method? So this one, it has view.getTime. So let's actually refactor it a little bit more. So instead of template, we can do get template there. So we can extract that. So we're just bypassing this variable. And this is a template. I'm going to just call it a view right now, just because it'll make more sense when we get to the model view controller architecture. Now we're building HTML response. Just want to see if this is all the same. Yep, so we just moved everything. We had like 7 lines of code or 5 lines of code. Now we're down to 3 lines of code. So let's take the current state of server.py and figure out that what we need to do to make it follow single responsibility principles. Server.py receives a request and passes it off to the request class. Request class will parse through it and gives it back to the server the ability to read it as a dictionary. That's where we're passing this over there as a dictionary. Server is in charge of finding the correct template, building an HTTP response, and sending that response back to the client. We should probably create a response class to take some of the load off the server. So we should also create a router class that handled reading of each request and deciding how to respond using the response class. All right. So let's extract some more stuff. All right. So we want to kind of, where am I going? Move.
Hey Tom,
Yep.
should you change the template on the line 28 and 24 for the
Yes.
view?
Yes, you are right. View. View. And we can even get rid of this body response by doing view here. So now we're down to 2 lines of code. Whoop. And then get templates for the body response. We can even do that like that. And everything should still work. Everything's still working. Everything's still working. All right. So now let's actually just, let's see what we got. Actually, I'm going to keep that there for right now. So I'm just going to print this body response. I just want to see what this looks like real quick. Just see clear. I'm doing that, and I'm going to click this. So again, it's just the raw HTML for that one. Okay. But we're building the HTML response within our server. We want to extract that to perhaps a response class. So I'm going to kill the server, ls. I'm going to build touch or create a new file called request.py, not request, response.py. The code response.py and bring that over here. All right, let's see what we have to do to extract some information. So instead of building the template in here and returning about a response in here, let's actually build it all in our request class, or sorry, response class. Response. So what do we need to do to build a response? What do we need? So we have a path because we want this to be a little bit dynamic. So when it comes here, we need to extract this information. So I'm going to comment that out. Let's actually cut that out and bring it over here initially. Not sure what we're going to do with that, but this is where we're going to extract all the data. So from response, import request or response. And I don't know what we need yet. So what do we need in order for this to work? We need the path. So in our init, we can do def init. And it takes in self, it takes in a path because we can run that in there. And then what else can it need? We need to pass some data to the response body, potentially. So what data are we passing into the index template? What Python data are we passing into the index template? Jarrett.
Styles, I guess.
Yeah, I was just seeing which one would respond first. Jarrett Styles. What data are we? What Python data are we passing to the index template?
the URI of the slash.
So
Sorry,
yeah.
like to the HTML.
Yep.
Nothing.
Nothing. What data am I passing to the time template?
The time variable.
The time variable. So in my response, I have to determine what data I'm going to pass in as well. And it always is going to, I'm going to have to pass in an object, but I might not always have to pass in data, as I won't be in the index.html. So I'm going to have a default value of an empty object here. I'm going to pass that stuff. If there is data to be passed through, I'll pass it into here when I create a new response object. So instead of, let's just start with here, this one. So I'm going to say create a response, and create a response object, initialize with a new path, and the path I'm passing in, I need to pass into here, so I can say index, but I'm not passing in any data, so I don't need any parameters for there. So I'm just passing in that. So when it comes into here, I need to self.path equals path, and self.data equals data. Just because. And then what I want to return as the body response is literally just HTML, like pretty much like a string of HTML. That's what the body response used to be. So I'll need to create a template in here. So like I was creating a template in here, I need to create a template in here somewhere. So what method in a class prints out the object as a string?
Underscore str.
Yep. So I remember the dunder string method. So if I want to print this class, I want it to show up as a string, kind of like I am down here, I need the double underscore dunder string method. So in here is where I'll create my body, my template, get template. So I can do self.get template. And then I'm passing in, instead of the path, hard coding the index, I can do self.path because I'm passing in index as the path. So I'm doing get template here. I'm passing that into a template object that I need to, and from Jinja to import template. Okay. So I'm creating a template, creating a response body, I'm rendering that. And in the render, I may or may not have data. So right now in this example, I'm not passing in any data, but maybe down here I need to pass in the time, like right here. So I'll need to pass in self.data. Even if it's an empty object, that's okay, I can pass it through. And then I can just return the cell or body response. But I'm missing something. So I'm building the body response, but I'm not attaching any headers to it. So I need to somehow run it through this build HTML response. So I can do self.build HTML response and pass in the body response into this instance method that we created earlier. And now that should work. So if I have a response down here, if I do response, if I comment this out, response equals response, passing in the time. This is literally comes in here for the path, passing in time as path, assigns path to the self.path instance variable. And then when I'm going to print that where does it get this? Oh, so right here. So I'm passing in the self.path into the self.get template, which is literally the location of where that time template is located at, or the index template, assigning it to a template object, assigning it as a view. I'm rendering that view or that template, and I'm passing in whatever data I want to pass in. So for the time example, I want to pass in this date time object. So if I clear the screen, clear the terminal, instead of sending the entire build HTML response body, I can just send in the response.code, response encode. Let's try that one first, and then we'll. Sorry, nothing's working. So if I click, all right, nothing's working. Response object has no attribute encode. So I need to stringify this response by doing str, which stringifies it, and then I can actually encode it. So if I clear the screen, whoop, localhost is already bound to it. Clear the terminal, start the server, go to 9291. All right, still not working. All right, get template takes one positional argument, but two were given. Self.path, line 10 string. What? Line 18?
Should we put self.path for line 14?
Line 14. Ah, there we go. Oh, no, that should be okay because path is being passed into here. It says line 10, but two are
I
given.
think we need self passed into the get template method and the build HTML response methods.
You are right. Thank you. So I just copied those over from here, from the server, but I didn't add the self to that. Thank you. All right, things are working. All right, there we go. That looks a lot better. But if I go to, let's see if time is still, so now I need to do time, so I can get rid of that. I can get rid of all of this, response, and close that, and then stringified version of the response object, and then encode it. All right, let's see if this works. So I'm going to clear the terminal. All right, already in use. I'm going to switch ports. Clear. All right. Whoop. 2 works. And now if I do \time, time works. So we're starting to do single responsibility, which is nice. So we're separating things out into its own classes. We're trying to keep the server.py file as slim as possible. Can I make any more so that these two lines are the same? So I'm going to get rid of that. Whoop. Okay, get rid of that one and just put the response in line with that if statement. So if I clear the terminal, run that again, dang it. Clear, run the server. Still works. Still works. All right. What questions do you have up until this point?
I have a question.
Yep.
So I kind of didn't get that part, like response class, line 18. No, response class. Yeah, this one. Like as I understand, text body it's the HTML file, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we are putting HTML body again. Like, why we are doing this twice?
I guess we really don't need to do that.
Oh, okay.
So I'm wondering if we can just see if this works. If we do, and get rid of that. So I'm going to clear that. Oh, what happened? HTML body is not defined. Oh, makes sense. Ah, damn. Clear it. Still working. It's not working. Oh, there we go. Everything still works.
Yeah, this one makes for me sense.
Okay. Yep. Cool. All right, let's keep going. Let's get through this. All right. So this is all the response class. So we have, okay, that's where that was given to us. All right, one final refactor. We want to put all of our custom classes in its own classes folder directory as part of our single responsibility principle, just like we have with templates. Cool. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to do it in here. So we have templates, classes, and then move these two into our classes directory. And now in our server, we need to do classes. Everything should still work. I can kill the server just to make sure everything's still working. All right, that works. That works. Oh, cancel that. All right. Let's see. All right, the router. This release will introduce you to decorators in Python. There are 2 articles, so you can reference these. But we'll write a lot of code for us. So let's just write the code here. In our classes, let's create a router.py and bring all this stuff in here. All right. So, all right. So the @class method is a decorator, so we don't need to actually have an instance of a router. So let's just kind of go through here. And now we have a controller file that we want to make. Let's just run through this. So our router is essentially going to tell us what to send, what routes we want to do, or what routes we want to process when we visit them. And then what we actually want to send to the client when we visit those routes. So essentially our routers just holds all of our routes in this routes class variable. And we'll get to that. And now in here, we're going to controller, but that's supposed to be on the same level as server. And now here we have our controller. So our controller will be where we store all the logic to process each request. So anytime we add a new route, we'll process what we want to happen when a user visits that route. So this router, I'm going to get rid of this. I'm just going to get rid of this. Here, this route method, we're going to make this as a decorator. So notice how this route method takes in a path and a method, which is default is a get, so a get request. But inside of this route, we define another method that literally has a route object that we pass in the path, or we have this add to routes method that we pass in a function as an argument. So think of functions or methods as any type of object you can just pass around as variables, just as you would do variables. So I'm passing this add to routes function. I'm passing a function into the add to routes method. And now I'm assigning this route object. I'm assigning a path to it that's being passed in as the route. And I'm assigning this function to this function key as its value and whatever the method is. And I'm appending that entire route object to this self.routes class variable. And then I'm returning. So I define this method, and inside the route method, I'm literally just returning this routes method. This is how you like create a decorator. And then inside our controller, we can create a decorator, make this as, this is actually a class decorator. So this is just a way that extends the functionality of this index method. It's really, it's an advanced topic. It's the same way as writing, hold on a second. As writing index equals router. So I'm calling this router class dot routes, and I'm passing in this as a method, or as an argument, which is this path. And this route method returns the add to routes method. So this right here returns literally this add to routes method. So, and if I want to invoke it, I can invoke it and pass in this, pass in this method right here. So this route method, we define a new method called add to routes, and we return the add to routes method. So in the controller, I'm defining this new method called index, and I'm creating a variable called index, and I'm assigning it to router.routes, passing in that method, or I'm passing in that path, and then I'm invoking the add to routes method because it's being returned, and I'm passing in this index method, which executes this response class and returns this response. So let me just execute this real quick, and then we'll walk through it. So then if everything's removed, I'm just gonna copy this over to the server. Clear. Localhost 800 or 888. So this still works, as well as time still works. So right here, while true in the request, so I'm creating a request, and now I'm passing that request into the router.process method. Comes into here, router.process, processes the request, parses through all that request, kind of like what I'm doing, what I was initially doing with all the if-else statements in the server before essentially doing all of this part. It's like what I'm going to do with that request as I go to that route. Oh. The hell. Copy paste this back over. So router.process the request. Where'd the controller go? Yep. So the controller just processes what we want to add, what we want to do when we go to these specific routes. And then a decorator is literally doing the same. This decorator right here processes, or like we add different routes to our application, and this controller processes what we do, what data we want to send to the client based off of what route we go to. So I can add another route called def like login, say response equals response, and just say login, return response. And then here I can say router dot route. And if I wanted to go to like / or \login, I need to create a template called login, HTML, then H1 login page. So now if I want to start the server and go to a login page like / login, oh, what happened? Name response is not defined. Oh, geez. $880. So if I go to 880/login, I get the login page. And if I didn't want to do this, write it like this, I got rid of that. It's literally the same as doing this. So if I kill that again, what's going on? Index is not callable. Should work. Why isn't that working now? Anyway. I know I'm sure you have a lot of questions. What questions do you have?
Sorry, on line 10, and the thing you just commented out, routes is plural, and I think it maybe should be singular.
Oh, yep. Thank you. So if I clear that. Whoop. So it's still working.
So where's index getting passed to again, Tom? Yeah.
So this is actually automatically executing every time I run the once I start the server. So where's index being passed in?
Yeah, can you go over the class decorator a little bit again, how that
So so in the router, each decorator needs a wrapper function. So it's a function within, like it's a function that's wrapping another function. So this is considered, I believe this is the wrapper function. So, and this route decorator will always return the wrapper function. So just to separate it out. And this is like a more advanced decorator just because it's technically a class decorator. We're accessing it through a class. You rarely see this, but it's the same thing as defining. I'm instantiating a new router class, and I'm executing the route method right here. So I'm executing the route method. I'm passing in this path right here. And this route method returns the wrapper function, which is this add to route method that takes in a function as an argument and does something to it, which in this case, it appends it to this class variable. So it literally just returns the function, but it doesn't invoke the function yet. And in here, what I'm doing here is I'm actually invoking the function by passing in this index function, which it's supposed to take in as an argument right here. And I'm passing in that index function into this method.
Okay.
And this just, from a syntactical perspective, that's what it looks like, but it's the same thing as doing this. So I can literally do the same thing down here, get rid of that portion of it, just say like time, and then like login. This should be time, login. And this is just like the syntactical sugar of how it looks. And you can even print the function here, like print function to see what function that is called. See, like it automatically executes right away when I start the server. So it's an index function, a time function, and a login function. And it's adding those functions to this object that adds it to the routes. So when I visit that route, it runs through this process and figures out, hey, what route should I go to? And it tells me to like what should be sent to that, what data should be sent back to the client. And that's what's going on right here with this router.